Not what I expected. What have you been up to now, James?
Oh, that's nice. A few months ago, homebrewers, we did a video on this channel where we compared 3 of our favourite yeasts to use when brewing a hazy pale ale or IPA, just to see how they all showed up, what the characteristics were like, and how they differed from one another. Well, in this video, we're taking that concept one step further, and this time we're looking at malt. Now, malt is our favourite brewing ingredient here at the Malt Miller, and it's no secret why. There's so much delicious flavour locked away in those grains, but there's also so many varieties to choose from. Sometimes it can feel a little bit confusing to understand what the differences are between all of these different malts, especially when we look at our base malts. Now, base malts are the building block of every beer. They give us all of that delicious fermentable sugar that we need to produce the alcohol, but also give us a solid base to build upon. And with so many different maltsters now that are producing similar malts, some of which come from the same varieties of barley, it can feel a little bit daunting to know exactly what you're buying and what differences are going to show up in your beer. So I've been really inspired by the reaction to that yeast comparison video, and I thought, what better time to actually brew some beers with 3 different malts and see exactly how they show up. Now, as with our yeast comparison video, we've adopted the same process where we've brewed the same recipe and just switched out that one ingredient, in this case, the base malt. We've used the same hops, added at the same time in the same ratios, we've used the same water treatment, we've used the same fermenters, we've even used the same brewing equipment. They've all had the same yeast, they've all been conditioned for the same amount of time, and they've all been carbonated to the same level. So hopefully we're going to be in a position where we can really pick out how the malt shows up. Now, when I started planning this, I really wanted to focus on Maris Otter. It's such a stalwart for brewing here in the UK. It's super popular with so many brewers, both commercial and home brewers, but it's also a malt that's available from a number of different maltsters, handled in different ways, different equipment, different people, so much that can go into the end product that could show up in our glass. Now, I really wanted to think about how we can put both ends of the spectrum on show here. So we've picked a standard Maris Otter from Crisp. We've then gone to the other extreme and we've picked a floor-malted Maris Otter from Warminster. Just to try and add in a little bit of a curveball and some form of control, I brewed a third beer, exactly the same recipe, but I added Golden Promise as well. And I'm really interested to see if our tasters can pick out each malt correctly, but also, and more importantly, define the differences between them in the finished beer. Now, the focus of going with a standard Maris Otter and a traditional floor Maris Otter really gives us that distinction between tradition and modern malting practices. We could expect some very different results, whether that be in colour, flavour, aroma, but actually we're only going to find that out if we put this beer in front of a number of our team members here at the Malt Miller, get them to taste it and get them to analyse it. Now, we're going a little bit more detailed here in terms of what we're asking from our tasters on this tasting test. I've broken the categories down into 4 distinct areas. We've got appearance, aroma, flavour and mouthfeel. Within appearance, I'm asking our tasters to assess both clarity, colour and head retention. In terms of aroma, I'm looking to see if they can pick out things like bready, nutty, sweet notes on the aroma, as well as toasted notes, grainy notes, or whether all of them present just a neutral aroma. In terms of flavour, we're obviously looking for malt presence. That's the key thing here. We're looking to see if one stands out above the other. After all, Maris Otter is renowned for giving such a deep malt character to the beers that it's used in. As well as that, I'm asking them to look at sweetness versus dryness, because there's some interesting things I want to talk about later on in the video in terms of attenuation. And then I want to look for hop presence, because I really want to see whether these 3 malts are slightly different in the way that they play with the hops that we've added into the beer. And then finally, mouthfeel. Now, it's only a real small note on mouthfeel, but again, I want to see if that helps us pick out some of the distinguishable points in terms of how the beer's fermented. And then finally, after they've done their blind tasting, I'm going to tell them the 3 malts that we've used, and then I want them to try and pick which of the 3 samples is each malt and see just how many of them get it right. Now, just a note on the recipe that we generated for this. As I said, we're aiming for a fairly standard English pale ale. Works quite well for this sort of style, but also is a fairly blank canvas for us to focus on the flavour of the malt. We targeted an original gravity of 1043 and a final gravity of around about 1011 to leave us with a beer that would finish around about 4.2%. So alcohol wasn't a dominating factor in terms of the flavour that could shine through, because we're not using much in the way of malt to add additional flavour and complexity. Now the recipe was super simple. It was 94% of the given base malt that we've chosen and then 6% of wheat malt on top, just to add a little bit of extra head retention, just so that we made sure that the beer had the best possible chance of presenting well in the glass. In terms of IBUs, we aimed for about 30. That gave us a fairly nice balanced kind of approach to the beer. And we went for Challenger all the way through the boil, 3 additions, one at 60, one at 15, and then one at 5 minutes, just so we could get a nice hop presence, but again, not dominating the malt character whatsoever. Now, I brewed all 3 of these beers over on our brew school using G30s, same water volumes, same water treatment across all of them, so that we could really see how the malt performed both on brew day, but also have a very comparative product at the end for our tasters to try. We fermented these in Grainfather GF30s on our glycol chiller setup that we've got here, all held at 19 degrees for primary fermentation, then just ramped up to 21 degrees for a couple of days to do a diacetyl rest before adding Brausol to the fermenters for 48 hours and then moving to cold crash them. After that, they all got moved into kegs. All were put into our fermentation chamber set to 4 degrees and sat at 30 psi for a few days to carbonate to the same level. That's enough about the process. Let's dive into actually getting some of our tasters to try these beers. So you've got sample 1, 2 and 3 as marked on your glass.
Yep. I'm judging them against each other.
Yeah, so comparatively against one another.
Right, okay.
Got your glass of water there as well, so that you can refresh your palate as required.
And I can judge how clear they are against the water as well.
You can, yes.
Could give me a clean cup.
What have you been up to now, James?
You make these?
I did.
Yeah.
Right, come on.
Oh, it's nice beer.
That one, pretty hazy.
Shouldn't all 3 the same beer?
I'm usually a man of few words.
I mean, there are fractionally differences visually, and being serious about it, slight marginal taste variations.
That's one thing I haven't experimented much with is base. I've only ever used crisp Maris Otter.
Right, let's drink.
If I put it in the right box.
Number 3 is definitely the lightest of that. Not quite so much aroma on that one.
I don't get much difference between these. This is a head scratcher. You could have given me an easy one to start with, James.
Nice beers, have to be said.
Now for the good stuff. That's interesting because they're all fairly similar in the way in body.
Finding it tough?
It's not easy.
How did you find it? One word.
Very similar.
Well, that's it. The tasting tests are done and the results are in, and I've accumulated everybody's thoughts and scores, which I'm going to dive into in a minute. Before though, I did ask every single one of the participants if they had a particular beer that they enjoyed the most. Do you have a favourite?
I think number 2.
I think probably number 2 is my favourite.
Number 2.
And as you can see, the one that really stood out was the Floor-Malted Maris Otter from Warminster. And that's no real surprise, just because of the extra depth of flavour that can show up in that beer. But we'll dive into that in a little bit more detail now. Can you now distinguish which one is which?
Oh, okay.
But before we dive into that, you'll probably be interested to find out how many of the team correctly identified each individual malt.
Gone with crisp Maris Otter for 1.
Okay?
The low colour for 2. Is it low colour?
No, floor-malted.
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 And Golden Promise for 3.
3 stands out because of its clarity. Way clearer than the other 2. I'm going to say that's Golden Promise. I think that beer number 2 is the crisp Maris Otter, and I think that number 1 is Warminster.
Pick out which one is which.
2's the Warminster, 1's the crisp,
So 3 would be Golden Promise.
3's Golden Promise.
I really didn't know which was supposed to be which, but I've kind of gone for Warminster Floor-Malted Maris Otter, crisp Maris Otter, and I think that might be Golden Promise because there's a stronger difference between the 3 on that.
I would guess that number 2 would be the Warminster.
I would go the floor malted number 2, which only because that's the one I enjoyed most, and I would imagine that's probably the floor malted malt.
Number 1, I would put Golden Promise. And number 3, I would put Crisp Maris Otter.
It's difficult, but I would say number 1's the Golden Promise and 3's the Crisp Maris Otter.
Okay, sample number 3.
Yes,
You chose Golden Promise.
I did.
You were correct.
Beautiful.
Well done, Paul. You've got them all right.
Is it right, is it?
Yeah, well done. Sample number 2. You chose Crisp Maris Otter.
Oh, I got the Maris Otters the wrong way round.
You did.
Ah.
Well done. You have also scored 100% accuracy on this test.
No way.
Yes.
What?
Okay, you're entirely wrong.
Wow, the visual difference just made me head to Golden Promise.
The one you got right was that number 2 is Warminster Maris Otter. Floor-Malted.
Not what I expected. Really interesting experiment.
Now, of the 6 people that took part, we had 4 of them correctly identify that sample number 2 was indeed the floor-malted Maris Otter from Warminster. But interestingly, overall, only 2 of the tasters correctly identified all 3 beers. Well done, Joe, you were one of them. Rob correctly identified which of the samples was Golden Promise, but failed to distinguish the difference between the other 2 Maris Otters. 2 of the team here mixed up Crisp Maris Otter with Simpson's Golden Promise, and then 1 person incorrectly identified all 3 samples. Reiki, I'm looking at you.
Wow.
Now, we amalgamated the scores from all 6 of our team members that took part, so that we could try and get a really good average to see which of the beers stood out in each individual category. Now, on appearance, the big telltale sign that stood out for the team was the colour. So floor-malted Maris Otter is a slightly deeper colour, and that really did stand out in the glass, with Golden Promise being the palest of all 3 beers, but also doing quite well in terms of clarity. Now, when we talk about aroma, the team identified that floor-malted Maris Otter also had the most descriptors associated with it, standing out for having notes of breadiness, sweetness, and some grainy notes as well. And in contrast, Golden Promise presented the most neutral aroma across all 3 of the beer samples. Now, when it comes to flavour, it's no surprise that both of the Maris Otter varieties really stood out against Golden Promise, with the floor-malted version of Maris Otter just ahead in terms of the amount of flavour that was coming through in the glass, but also presenting a fair amount of malt sweetness. Now, this is a really interesting one, and I referred to this earlier in the video. The attenuation for the 3 beers, and indeed the extraction on brew day, was slightly different. Both the Maris Otter varieties extracted around about 1042 in terms of their starting gravity, and they finished fairly comparatively as well. Standard Maris Otter finished at 1010, floor malted at 1011. Now, Golden Promise extracted higher and actually extracted to 1048, but it finished higher as well at 1014. So in terms of the final ABV of the beer, they were all pretty much the same, but the additional sweetness that was left in the Golden Promise wasn't actually picked up on by our team members here. The Golden Promise did also come out as having a little bit more body and also a slightly smoother finish. So I found this really interesting to do this test and put these 3 different beers in front of the team. They all enjoyed it. There were some surprises along the way. I also think it shows that whilst there might only be some marginal gains when you're brewing a beer of this style, selecting the right base malt for your recipe can make a big difference, especially if you're looking to layer in subtle nuance in terms of the malt flavour and characteristics you're aiming for. Now, this is only 3 malt varieties and there's hundreds available, and in terms of base malts, there are dozens and dozens to pick from. I could only test 3, but I'd love to do this again with some other interesting malts, maybe look at some speciality malts and see if there was some kind of differences that we could pick out there. But I'd also love to hear from you if there are things that you would like to see us put to the test. Equally, if you've got any questions, thoughts or comments on what we've covered here in this video, drop it down in the comments section and I'll come back to you, and I will always try to answer anything that we haven't necessarily covered in detail in the video. I strongly encourage that you play around with different base malts in some of your beer recipes, see how they show up, because you can find some real distinct differences, and also it's just good fun. And that's ultimately the point of homebrewing, to have fun, learn some stuff along the way and end up with some great beer at the end. All that's left for me to say is, if you're not already, please do subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications and give this video a thumbs up. You can sign up to our newsletter in the link below in the description so you can stay up to date with everything we're doing here at Malt Miller HQ. And of course, you can follow us on all our socials. Have a great brew.